Okay, stewardship. This is a word that is not very common in the English, except perhaps in the biblical context. So last week there was a comment by Mr. Lai. The fact is that I think what he meant was that God has to bless me first before I can give. And I think that's a very valid point. If God doesn't bless me, how can I give? And of course, there was the other side of the coin, which Angela is not here today. Angela mentioned that, oh, no, you have to give first. Then only God will bless you and God will give you. So, what do you guys think? Which one comes first? It's like the chicken and the egg. Which one comes first? The giving first or the blessing first? Has God got to bless you first, then you give? Or you give first, then God will bless? Give first, okay? Brother Alex says give first.
Everything belongs to Him.
All right. So
everything belongs to Him.
Okay. So does God bless us first, or then only we give, or we give then God will bless us?
I think we have to give.
Let's look at our very first couple in Genesis, and let's see what happens to them. Because as we read the Bible stories, we kind of get an idea which comes first. What is the order that comes first? So if we go way back into the book of Genesis, when Adam and Eve were created, that was on the 6th day after God had created everything on earth to prepare for the creation of man, of course, man and woman. And God blessed them. And God said to them, this is Genesis 1 verse 28. Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living thing or every living creature that moves on the ground. We know this verse very well. So it is just the fact that Adam and Eve were born and created by God Himself. And straight away, God already blessed them with the whole Garden of Eden. And they were asked to be fruitful and to increase in numbers. But what God blessed them with the Garden of Eden, with all the provisions, the enjoyment, the entertainment, the pets that they can, as many pets as they can have, all the fruits and vegetables, everything was there. So blessing come first or giving first? From the very beginning, you can know that God blesses first. God blesses first. Because Adam and Eve never gave anything. They were just born into this world, created into this world, and God already blessed them with the most beautiful garden and provisions they could ever imagine. What was their duty? What was their duty? Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky. That means they were supposed to manage the earth. You're right, Alex. They're supposed to manage the earth, and they're supposed to, now here it says rule over, means that they are supposed to govern. They're not supposed to eat, actually. They're supposed to govern all the creatures in the sea, in the birds, and every living creature that moves on the ground. Their job was to be plantation manager as well as zookeeper, in other words, to take care of the animals as well as the garden itself. That was that. Of course, there were conditions about the 2 trees and all that. There were conditions. But the first thing was that God blessed them. So blessing, God is already given us the blessing already. Then it's our turn to give back to Him. So blessings come from God. And Jesus had to reiterate that when Jesus was on this earth. When Jesus was on this earth, that's your assignment for this week, Luke chapter 12, also parallel Matthew 6. These are the 2 chapters that talk about life. And here was Jesus talking to a large crowd of people that were following Him, most likely around Galilee, most likely. And if you have your Bible and you turn to Luke chapter 12, the very first verse.
In these circumstances, a crowd of many thousands came together, so that they were trampling on one another. he began to say to his disciples first.
Okay, I just want to set the setting for the speech that Jesus is going to talk about. And here, he is among, in my version, innumerable multitude. That means there were thousands of people gathered together to listen to him, and they trample on each other. That means they were all crowding round. And these were mostly the poor folk. These were mostly the ordinary folk. These are the ones that are poorer, that have been exploited by the leaders. That's why the first thing that Jesus told them was, beware of the Pharisees. Beware of these leaders. Because they were the ones that taught legalism. They were the ones that taught works. They were the ones that placed the yoke on their necks. Remember in the book of Acts, that was what Peter was saying. And these are the ones that exploited the poor as well as the widows, including the widow that gave the 2 mites. And here was Jesus telling them, don't worry about your life. What you will eat or wear, don't worry. Don't worry. It's the same as Adam and Eve. Don't worry. Everything is provided for you already. The garden is there. There's nothing you need to do. Everything is already provided for you, and even more. And he continues. He continues to talk about, see, Jesus likes to use things that they can see. And he says, consider the lilies. I'm sure there was about a couple of lilies along the river or whatever. Consider the lilies, how they grow. This verse we are quite familiar, those of us who are more seasoned Christians. How they grow, they don't toil. Do they toil? They don't toil nor spin. But I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not clothed like one of these. Last Sunday, my husband, in his wisdom, took me away for a relaxing trip up to Penang Hill, to a place called the Habitat. And it's really, really nice. I must thank him for his wisdom to take me away from my work as well as my Bible studies and all that, just to relax. And I took so many pictures of flowers and beautiful trees and plants, and really, beautiful. God's creation is really, really so beautiful. And that's why he says, even Solomon in all his glory was not clothed like one of these. And these flowers don't even toil or spin, and they can come out so beautifully. So Jesus was assuring the poor people that, look, don't worry about your future. Don't worry about your future. And what were they supposed to do? They were supposed to seek the kingdom of God above all else, and he will give you everything you need. And this one we know so well, right? We even sing, but seek ye first the kingdom of God, and everything will be added unto you. And these are exact words of Jesus speaking to the multitude. So if we are not to have to worry, we are just to, like the lilies, don't have to spin. And if God is going to give us everything we need in the world that we ask for, as long, of course, that we seek him, then the question is, why then are there poor Christians? Why then are there Christians who are suffering or who have problems with money, who can't even make ends meet, especially during this pandemic? There are many, many people who have been affected, including Christians. So why then, if God owns everything and God blesses us, why then are Christians having financial problems? So if God is the giver of the universe, why are there poor Christians? Any answer to this dilemma? What do you guys think? Test of life, Brother Alex says.
Jesus
Give everything.
poor people.
Hey?
They give everything
They give everything to who? To
everyone, to the poor, and to themselves. So
All right.
they become poorer.
Okay, so they give everything and then they themselves become poor. Any other idea why are there poor Christians? Is it we are holier because we are poor? Is that the standard for holiness as well as spirituality? Then why do you think there are Christians who are poor? Sometimes we are not good stewards, okay? Is it that Christians are lazy?
Jesus said there are always poor people around because sometimes you're born in a very poor environment. You're just poor. Well,
Okay.
no time, no places to expand.
Okay, you're right. Because let's say today, if you're born in Syria, or today you're born in a very, very war-torn country, like perhaps Iraq or somewhere else, and the circumstances does not allow you to run away, like a refugee, and you're stuck in that war-torn country, yeah, definitely you will be poor. But talking about in general, in developing countries like here, or in developed countries like America, about very practical terms about this issue, because there are Christians who are poor. There are Christians who always have money problem. Not only Christians, but of course, as the whole, the society is such. I'm in the sales, I'm in the insurance business, and one of the most common objections that we get when we go and approach people is that I have no money. Okay, I have no money. At the end of the month, once my salary comes out, I have too many bills to pay. How many of us are like that? You earn 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. At the end of the day, when the salary is in the bank, all the bills start mounting up. Or are they just complacent? Or are they not resourceful? And by the time you finish, it's not even enough. And we have to go to other sources to get extra money to pay the bill. That's right. There was a Singapore movie, Money No Enough. It was very interesting, very funny story. But it's not funny in the sense that many people face that. They feel that they have no money, and it doesn't matter how much you earn. It's not a matter of how much you earn, because somebody can earn 20,000 a month, which is a lot of money, but yet they are still in debt. They still say they have no money. They say, I cannot afford. Okay, and in other words, they are poor. At the end of the day, when you have no money left in your pocket, you are poor. You're a poor person. Whether or not you're earning 50,000, 20,000, 2,000. And there are some people who earn 2,000 ringgit a month and can have 4 kids and survive, and and still have a very happy life. Have you seen that? Have you seen that? Yeah, there are some of our office boy, they have 4 kids and they have a good life. They live in the kampong, maybe. Yeah, but they maybe they eat ikan bilis and rice. They don't go to fine dining. Once in a while they go McDonald's. They can still have a good life. So what is the issue here? What is the issue here? In secular term, it's called poor financial management. As Christians, the more pertinent question to ask is this: are you the steward or are you the owner? Right? Are you a steward or are you an owner of what you have? Which one will we handle better? Somebody else's money or our money? Let's say, example, today our Agong is now very well loved by the whole of all Malaysians. If Agong one day to come and tell you, hey, okay, Alex or Val, I'm going to give you $1 million, right? You are going to manage my money for me. The Agong tells you. What will you do? Will you manage it better than for him than for yourself? That's why governments, the penalty for abusing the rakyat's money or the country's money, the penalty is higher than if you abuse your own money. So are you the steward or are you an owner of the property of the King of the universe? That is the main pertinent question. Because if we say God owns everything, like beginning of the lesson, I think Karen says, if God owns everything, that means including what we have. If you look around today, your house, your car, everything, your handphone, everything. If God owns everything, are you merely a steward taking care of his property, including your monthly salary? The pertinent question will be how you classify the things that you are given or the things that you are blessed with. Is it, I'm just a caretaker, or I own everything, or I have enough money, I give to God. I don't have enough, you see, I have to pay, like Mr. Lai said, got to pay this. Where I got enough to give to the church? Where I got enough to return my tithe? And that's the thing that a lot of people, sometimes they'll message me and they say, I don't even have enough to pay the bills. How do I return tithe to God? Can I return less or not? Can I give less to God or not? It's a very hard question for us to answer. Very, very hard. Yes or no? Right? It's a very yes. Then you say, I got no money. I got 2 kids. I cannot to feed. But behind the question would be, are you a steward or are you an owner? What do you think? Are you a steward or are you an owner?
Person, the owner should help the steward rather than asking to give tithes every time. For how many years he's been paying? So at that time, he should reward person for contributing so many years in his life. Like,
all right. Okay. Good observation. Very good observation. Right? I've been giving. Then when times are bad like now, why don't God, you give me back my 10% can? At this time, I need my 10%. Hey, that's very realistic and very practical statement, Mr. Lai. And I like that. That's very, very pertinent. Okay? And I'm sure God will deal with that. Now, whether or not you say you're a steward or whether you say you're an owner, right, it's very easy to say. But we will be able to test it out by your financial situation today. Okay? By your financial situation today, we'll be able to know whether you're the owner or the steward. I know I'm a bit harsh about that, but yes, it is one of it. The other one is how we can test whether you're a steward or an owner is your regard for the real owner. That means God himself. That means how you classify the givings. Like last week we talked about the offerings. The offerings. I didn't even talk about tithe, the 10%, right? We're talking about giving to God. Then we will know whether you figure you're the steward or the owner. But if you're the steward, have you been managing God's money that's given to you in the right way? Then I can say that you are a good steward. But if you have financial issues today, not to say that you come from poor family and all this war-torn country, but today if God has given you a good life and yet you still have financial problems, then we got to figure out what it means by being a good steward. If you want to be rich, learn. Now, who else can we learn from? Except from the richest man. And who is the richest man of his time? The richest and the wisest. I give you the clue.
Solomon.
Yes, Solomon. Solomon himself. See, a lot of times we don't study about Solomon. Because why? We only know of Solomon because of what? His 700 wives and 300 concubines. All in all, 1,000 trophies. Okay, 1,000. So we all, just as we know his father, David, because of what? Bathsheba. Right? Bathsheba. Not even Goliath, Bathsheba. But do you know that Solomon, when God wanted to give, God said, okay, what do you want? And Solomon asked for wisdom. And most of the time, we figured, oh yeah, he's very good at wise in making judgment. But the other thing he was wise at was in money management, was in financial management. Up to the point whereby in 1 Kings, it says that King Solomon excelled all the kings of the earth in riches and in wisdom. Note that, not only in wisdom, but in riches. The whole earth sought the presence of Solomon to hear his wisdom, which God had put into his mind. And even the Queen of Sheba, right? This is the famous one. The Queen of Sheba came all the way to learn. And Solomon was a very extravagant guy, You can see this is his palace. He has lions and all that, gold lions and everything. So he had a lot of riches. And the Queen of Sheba was one of those that came to talk to him, to learn from him. Was Solomon born rich? Did he come from a rich family? Yeah, because he came from royalty. He's the son of King David. King David was a very prosperous man because God blessed him. And of course, he was a great warrior. He went and he conquered so many nations. So Solomon inherited the riches from his father David. Most of the time, if young people or sons inherit the riches of the father, what will they do with the riches? Yeah, spend. Rich young kids, you can see them buying the Ferraris, you can see them eating the expensive steaks, right? Because why? Money comes easy for them. But not Solomon, not Solomon. Even though Solomon inherited the riches from his father, the first thing he ever did was what? First thing he ever did was to build the first temple for God. And he built a very magnificent, you can read that in chapter 6. So the minute he took over, David was not allowed to build the temple because of the blood in his hands. He wanted to build, but God says, no, you're not going to do it. Your downline is going to do it. One of your sons is going to do it. And ended up is Solomon. And so actually Solomon had to fight, the mother had to fight for him to get on the throne because there were other brothers fighting for the position. But finally, Solomon went up. The first thing he did was to build God's temple, and it was a very extravagant temple. He remembered to honor God first, to honor God first. So if you want to be blessed by God in this time, you had to honor God first. Right? Honor God. So he was blessed. Then he honored God with the first temple. Then he did build his own palace. He also honored himself, but he honored God first. And God allowed him to enjoy that. After that, he was the wealthiest man during his time. And you can see, if you read chapter 4, chapter 10, chapter 9, you can see what kind of wealth Solomon amassed. That's why all these people came to visit him, came to learn from him. He had 12,000 horses, 4,000 stalls of chariot horses. Now, some of your version will have 40,000. Because Chronicles and King is a little bit contradict. One is 40,000, one is 4,000. And then he have 25 tons of gold received every year. He had revenue. That means he knew how to trade. He knew how to have business partners. Every year there will be people giving him revenue. Every year. So whatever riches he had, he multiplied them. He had good relations. That's why I believe that some of the wives were more business transactions than anything. Of course, he loved them, but he also used them for the benefit, the economic benefit as well. Because what can you do with 1,000 wives, right? How can you love 1,000 wives? Even though the Bible said he loved them, but I believe that he also used them for connections, Then there was 500 gold shields and all these things, right? Fleets of trading ships, gold goblets, revenues, precious stones, large quantities of spices. People will come and give him things because they want to learn. So here was a man who knew how to manage his wealth. And thankfully for the fact that he wrote down. He was the one who wrote the Book of Proverbs. He wrote down quite a lot of good advice for us today on how to manage our money or how to be good stewards of God's money. That's why we need to learn a little bit. It's very easy to say that we are God's steward. Very easy. Yes, I'm a good steward. But at the end of the day, do you know some of the principles involved in managing or handling God's money, which has been entrusted to us? So it's good. So I'm going to go through because I think it's very practical that we go through. I know some of you may be a bit bored because I know all these things, but it's good to learn and to discuss about it as well. Book of Proverbs has 100 over verses on financial management and investment. 100 over. I'm just going to pick up a few. Alex, can you read this? Proverbs 21:20.
The wise have wealth and luxury, but the fools spend whatever they get.
Okay, so what does it mean?
They cannot retain their wealth. They can only know how to spend.
Okay, so like I said just now, you earn 3,000, you spend 3,500. 500 you put into your credit card. So that's why it says the fools spend whatever they get. They get 3,000 a month, they spend 3,000 a month. They get 4,000 a month, they spend 4,000. And this is written in the Bible, And we see that not merely a a spiritual book, but it is also a very practical book. Are you like that or not? Okay. Every time we get the money, are we the ones that spend? You know, it is quite common. I used to be like that. I used to spend more than I earn. And that's the trap, the trap that we get into. And a lot of times churches will tell you, oh, credit cards are Satan's tools. Are credit cards Satan's tools? Well, you said like this. Why?
It's how you use it.
Right. It's basically how you use it, right? I don't have credit card because I will abuse it. Yeah, fair enough. But perhaps if you learn a bit about financial management, then you can learn that credit card can help you to even save money. Okay, so it's not the credit card, it's the attitude towards stewardship. That's the problem. So here, when you get your salary, who do you pay first? Who do you pay first? Get your income or get the profit from your business, who do you pay first?
Government will take first.
Okay. All right, so that's deducted from your salary already, right? Because now we pay and earn the same time, right? So some of you working people will have it deducted from your salary straight away, your tax. And first, then next one, who do you pay? I mean, I'm talking about after all the deductions. Solomon has advice: honor the Lord with your possessions and with the first fruits of all your increase, so that your barns will be filled with plenty and your vats will overflow with new wine. So what God has given to you already, so now what do? You honor him back, the first fruits. It doesn't say 10%, but later on in Malachi, they will talk about bring in your tithes. But here, when they are farmers, the first fruits will be the best, the increase they give back. So the first thing that Solomon advises is that you honor the Lord with your possessions. So after the taxation, the EPF, the SOCSO, the first thing you do is honor the Lord with your offering. That's the first thing. Then you say, like that? Then how to pay rental? Like that? How to pay children's education? Honor the Lord with your possession. That's the first thing. Then the next person you pay is who? Alex is pointing to the wife. Valerie points to the daddy. You see, everybody says this, right? You may be the father, the mother, the wife, but have you ever considered paying yourself? Most of the time people tell me, not enough, I pay this, not enough for myself. See, the real aspect of stewardship is that after you have paid or returned to God, the next person should be, you have to pay yourself. You have to put something aside, which later Solomon is going to say. You got to put aside something for yourself. That means a savings. Then you give to the wife to do what? To pay the bills. But if the bills come first, you're going to have a lot of problem with saving for rainy day. That's why Mr. Lai said, now I got problem already. God give me. But God told you to take care of yourself and save it up for yourself. Before that, we're going to go through that. Okay? Yes?
God didn't take our money. The church took our money. The church should return the tithe to the people that took it from.
Last week, I already shared with y'all in the Old Testament how the Israelites were instructed to offer offering to God. Didn't I? All right. How were they asked to give offering to God in the Old Testament? 5 types of offering. Remember? Where were they supposed to bring the offering to? Mr. Lai?
The temple.
The temple for us today as Christians.
Normally, the church, but the church are not the correct people. There are so many churches. All of them is thinking of your money only.
All right. Okay. So you're just giving yourself excuses not to give. But I must go on. Okay. Everybody else is waiting. I must go on. But sometimes we do give ourselves excuses for not giving to the church. right? But the church is a representation of the temple. And if God in the Old Testament already told us to bring our offering to the temple, right? And today the church represents the temple. So the church is the place for us to bring the offering. The temple before, the church now, right? The temple before, the church now. Okay, now, where was I? All right, the next thing is, Solomon says this, go to the end, consider her ways and be wise. Have you ever seen ants before? What do ants do? Sometimes I feel like I'm an ant. Work, for sure. They are running around, they are picking up food. You will never see an ant resting. Have you ever noticed that? The ants are always running around. So here, Solomon says, go to the end, consider her ways and be wise. What ways are we talking about? Not the way that they bite people, but the way that they work. The way that they work. Meaning that even as Christians, even though Jesus says, consider the lilies in the fields, don't worry about it. But these poor people, when they went back, they still have to work. Right? So we also have to work diligently. Only the fact is that when we work very hard, what happens? God says, never mind. 6 days you will do your work, but on the 7th day, you do not work. Your ox does not work. Your donkey may rest. The slave born in your house, everybody as well as your alien will rest so that they may be refreshed. Solomon says we need to work hard, but God says, yes, work hard. 6 days you will do your work, but the 7th day, just take a rest. Don't worry about everything. Just take a rest. And that's the reason for the Sabbath day. Now, this one is a very important fact. And I am glad that Solomon put it down in the Book of Proverbs, which sometimes we may have missed. And that is what? The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. What does that mean? Anybody? What does that mean? Yeah, it means that if you borrow money, you are the servant for the lender. Does it mean that we don't borrow money from the bank? Is it okay for us to maybe have buy a house with a bank loan and things like that? Is it all right? It is okay. It's okay within the means. It's okay because God gives us the wisdom to put money in, to invest and all that. Yet, we need to understand that the borrower is still the servant to the lender. There is such a thing as a good debt. There's such a thing as a bad debt. So, but it's just a caution that we don't over leverage. So very, very wise sayings. The next very wise saying from Solomon. Can you imagine that so many years ago, he already cautioned about this? What is this talking about? What is this talking about? And many people go bankrupt because of this. Yes, don't stand as guarantor. Do not co-sign another person's note or put a guarantee for someone else's loan. Because if you can't pay it, even your bed will be snatched from under you. How many of us have ever been guarantor before for a friend or a brother, sister? All right. Did you get into trouble for it? I think bankruptcy, a lot of people have got into bankruptcy because of being just as innocent guarantor for a car. We get into trouble with that. And here it says very clearly, and you can say, hey, is that from the Bible? It is, Proverbs 22, verse 26 to 27. But what happens if there's a church member, a church brother and sister come to you and ask you to be a guarantor? How? These are all practical things and it happens. It's happened. Today is not so a very spiritual or theological class. Today is more practical. How about you as a leader of the church, Valerie and Alex and all these leaders of the church? What do you all do? Valerie say, I need a guarantor myself. I got PTN. Okay, Alex says, okay, I silver and gold and silver I don't have. Yes, this one is about planning. The plans of the diligent lead surely to plenty, but those of everyone who is hasty surely to poverty. Wow, very poetic. Solomon, really great. What do you think that means? Make careful and calculated decisions, yes. Be like Valerie. think twice, 3 times, 4 times first. That means
must do diligent study before you do any venture.
Yes, must do all these assessment and some business studies and go and do background check. If anybody, there are sometimes people come and ask my husband about certain investments. The church members will come and say, this one, got 20% returns every year, Wow, this company is from Singapore. Singapore is a very well-known company. Singapore, right? Singapore is a very good country and all that, right? And then they come and ask my husband whether or not should put into this kind of investment. And your own budgeting, your own finances, if you don't have, don't go and give people, don't go, plan for it yourself. They always say charity begins at home. A lot of times we think that, wow, like Mr. Lai say, we must give to charity, we must give to the poor and all that. At the end, you go back, your family is poor, right? Give too much. Right? If this brother needs a house 1,000, you give. This sister needs a house rental, you give, and all that, until you surely will to poverty. That's why it says everyone who is hasty. Hasty means you make decisions without thinking. And sometimes I'm like that. I become a very remorseful buyer. After I buy this dress, and then I go, why did I buy this dress? And so I sometimes shop hastily because of maybe some attraction, some advertisement and all that. But here it says, let's plan. The plans of a diligent person surely to plenty. That means if you plan your financial situation well, then it will not lead to poverty. Really. To be very honest, I always believe that as Christians, you shouldn't be poor. Unless you cannot manage your finances. And you don't work hard for your money. I mean, I'm not talking about those that are born in the circumstances that cannot be avoided. Because why? God takes primary responsibility to provide resources. Okay, Mr. Lai, God provides the resources for us. But we have a secondary and important responsibility too. To do what? To manage and be good stewards of what God has given us. And the pandemic has really taught us all a lesson that things can just go bust overnight. Correct or not? Business goes bust, everything. If you don't have the proper allocation of resources, that's where we suffer during this time. And then we blame the church. The church should give us. Yeah, the church is given. The church has been giving to those that really, really need. And yes, our church has been doing that for those who are maybe laid off or really the business really went bust and things like that. Yes, the church had, but we are not able to give all the time. That's why it's always good if whatever resources we can have at this moment to tie us through. Don't go and borrow from the loan sharks and all that. Our responsibility is to be good stewards of what God has given. Exactly the same in the Garden of Eden, it is down to today. Whether it's in the money, whether it's time, whether it's environment, whether it's resources, God has given it to us. And God says this, whatever measure you use will be the measure you receive. Luke 6:38. Give and he will give to you, for the measure you use it will be the measure you receive. How you are going to multiply the resources that God has given to you. That's why the story of the talent, right? All the talent, which we went through, Matthew 25, we went through that earlier, is whatever measure you use, this measure you receive. If God feels that He can depend on you to manage $1 million, God will give it to you. If God hasn't given you $1 million, perhaps God understands that you wouldn't know what to do with $1 billion. Okay, so God will give it to somebody else like Solomon, who's able to trade and multiply the riches and everything, the wisdom to do it. Yeah, God gives you the talent, you can multiply it. If God doesn't give you 1 talent, you can multiply as well. God give you 5 talents, you can multiply as well. But definitely, God blesses us first. And then after that, we are to use His resources to multiply and bless others with it. Whether it's through the church, because the church is a central place that God dwells in and God's people dwell in. The Old Testament, the first thing is not to help the poor. The first thing is to bring the offering to God first. Right? I think we have to be very clear on this aspect, is that the offering to God is not the giving to the poor. God has to be given first. Right, we finishing? Proverbs 3:5-6. Rose, are you there? Can you read that?
Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your way, submit to Him, and He will make your path straight.
Thank you so much. Okay? At the end of the day, you don't know how to handle money, learn about it. Learn about it and trust that the Lord knows what is the best thing for us. Lean not in our own understanding. And you're right. If you are in need, you ask God. Today, I got no food to eat. Right? Ask God. And have the faith, the promise that God is going to provide. But in all your ways, you must submit to Him. Submission of the heart is the most important thing. Then only God can work in us, and God will make our paths straight. I think that is the first rule of the matter, is that obedience comes in. After we are blessed, we obey, and we say, God, whatever it is, I will give back to you. Just like Mary of Bethany, just like the widow, just like the Israelites in those days, when they brought their offering to God, and just like us Christians today, when we bring our offering to the church.